Hello and welcome to Blogsprout. So I've gotten a number of requests to go through my keyword research approach. And today what I'm going to do is bring you through a live walkthrough of how I would do keyword research. I was requested by one of my followers to do something in the pet niche, and although I don't have a large pet such as a cat or a dog right now, I do have fish. So what I'm going to show you today is how I would approach keyword research if I were to start a blog in the fish niche, the personal fish tank aquarium niche. So in my fish tank, I have a betta, some snails, and two African dwarf frogs. So I pay for Ubersuggest. That is my favorite tool to use at this point. I have found it very useful for myself. So I would first start off by going to the Keyword Ideas tool on Ubersuggest. So I just put in fish tank right now. What Ubersuggest allows you to do is sort by volume. So if you have a minimum volume and a maximum volume, sort by SEO difficulty and cost per click if that's something you're interested in. You can also specify other types of keywords that you're interested in including or excluding from the search results. So under the Keyword Ideas tool, there are suggestions, which typically have the exact term fish tank in them. And if we scroll down, you notice there's at least 6 pages of results here. But what's also great about Ubersuggest is they have this related tab. So this gives you some more variations and ideas. And I find that most of my keywords actually come from this related tab. So what I do is I first start off by thinking, what are the general search terms that someone might be interested in? So we have fish tank, we have aquarium, we have betta fish, we have African dwarf frog, we have nearite snails, we have fish decor, tank maintenance. So that's a lot of categories. If I were to start a brand new niche, I would only want to select about 3 of those. So I know there's quite a bit of competition, generally speaking, in the betta niche, since there are lots of people with bettas. And having done my own research, I have found certainly plenty of resources to assist with betta fish, but I haven't found too many that are African dwarf frogs, so I may look at African dwarf frogs. I think fish maintenance is something that is very difficult. Considering I've gone through a number of fish because my tank hasn't been able to keep them alive, unfortunately. Anybody who can add some knowledge in that aspect might be really important, but there are multiple levels of maintenance. There's filters, there's heaters, there's cleaning procedures, there's materials, there's natural plants. Like there's a lot that can go into this. So to start, I'm going to kind of walk through what I would do based on what we're seeing in these results today. But the first thing I always do is after I type in my new keyword, I just immediately go to the SEO difficulty and shorten this list down to the minimum. So as you can see, that significantly cut out a lot of these keywords. And I like to go for keywords that have over 1,000 searches per month. And one of the reasons that this is my strategy is that these search results are defined and estimated using Google estimates on most of these platforms. But one thing we forget about is the other search engines that people may be searching for. And it's much easier to rank on, say, Bing, Yahoo, DuckDuckGo. And if you go after some of these larger volume, you may be able to rank on those other platforms that'll bring in some decent traffic. So the first one is Fish Tank Minecraft. That is not something I would pursue, as it involves Minecraft, the video game, and it's not really something of interest to me. So honestly, this keyword's kind of a bust in my opinion. So let me look at the related terms and see how that changes. So something that's good is a fish tank gets 110,000 searches a month, which I think is pretty good. So knowing that niche has plenty of search volume, now I'm seeing some very interesting results. Fish tank sharks, snail and fish tanks, multiple. All right, so now we're seeing multiple snails. In my opinion, whenever I see multiple variations on this list in the lower search volume, that allows you to, in this case, we can triple this value. And this gets snails in a fish tank get over 10,000 views a month, or searches a month. So this is something that I would definitely take a look in. And maybe this is one of my categories is snails. Because if I look at the broad category of snails, there's a lot of different types of snails. So you can then break that down even further. But again, the niche is personal fish tank aquariums. I would pick a domain in this niche that was broad enough that would allow me to look at other aspects of a fish tank, but I don't want to narrow down so much that it's just on snails or just on beta. That's not my approach, because I do personally believe that it is better to have one large site than multiple really small sites. I think it just helps you build authority and have greater variety and potential to rank in multiple search terms. So I like seeing those results first. Now I'm seeing a couple for beta, which I thought was pretty competitive. And brown algae, I had a problem with that. So that's something that's interesting. And again, a concept that you need to think about when you're looking at these keywords is, what is your knowledge? What do you actually need to know to help someone searching for this term, and what are things that you can research? One of my approaches is creating a better guide or template for what is currently out there. So, there are actually some really, really good keywords here that I would absolutely start to look for. So once I have, this is a good base keyword, and I think it's a great place to start. So I'm actually going to select this first page, and look, we're getting it just under 1,000 at the end. I'll select, okay, so this is choosing almost 500 keywords to export, which is a ton. And what Ubersuggest allows you to do is export this file into an Excel sheet. So next, what I would do is look at some other keywords and see if I can get more of these exported files. So I might look up home aquarium. Rather than just aquarium, this is something that is specific to the home. As you can see, it's not very popular in volume, and it has a hard difficulty, so there might not be much related. But let's narrow down this SEO difficulty and see what we have, see if it's worth looking at. And honestly, if I were to see these results of this low volume, right now it's not worth it. I had success by targeting higher volume keywords early on that were informational, but my long-term strategy is to maybe target some of the lower volume that are more buyer intent. So looking at the related terms, again, we're not really seeing much of anything that I'd be interested in going after. Fish at home aquarium, I don't exactly know what a person searching for that is quite looking for, and I don't want to go after saltwater sharks. I have a freshwater aquarium, so I'm trying to avoid the saltwater tank. So we saw that there were snails, so I'll look up freshwater snails. So freshwater snails should give us some interesting results to see what the the suggestions are for keywords. So freshwater snails for aquarium, those are pretty good. It's 34. It's a little on the high side. Freshwater snail eggs, freshwater snail types. These might be something I would be interested in. So let me look at the related. Freshwater snail eggs again, type of freshwater snails. That might be a good one with only 9. SEO difficulty, it's not quite 1,000, but it's not necessarily bad if we include these other queries, freshwater snails types, species. They all kind of fit in the same category, and that's something that I want you to use your brain about when you look at keywords. Is what are other ways in which people might search for this? And if you're seeing, and you're like I use Ubersuggest, that there are multiple variations of that query that would yield the same results, then you've found a good keyword. So I honestly think I found a pretty good winner right here. The one way I would confirm whether or not this is something I want to do is I would look at these search results. So what these search results will tell you are the top 10 results and some basic metrics about them. It'll include a backlink profile, which does have quite a bit on here, but what I really care about is the domain authority. So what I like to look at is results in the top 10 that have domain authorities under 35. So we see this as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 results. That's not bad. So what I would do, how I like to evaluate my keywords, is I'll just insert it here. Since there's not many keywords, I'm not going to bother exporting this file. I'm just going to manually type it in. So type of freshwater snails. Great. So search volume is 720. SEO difficulty is 9. And then what I do is I make a new column that allows me to report the number of websites on the top page that have under 35 domain authority. So in this case, we said there are 5. And I'm going to show you later why I do this and how it helps me select the keywords and prioritize which keywords I should go after. So that's a pretty good one. So we'll keep that in mind. Let's do nearite snails. So that's one of the specific snails I have in my tank. So I would go a little bit more in depth. Is there something with nearite snails that is underserved? And again, here we see this eggs, and I'm not really sure what that's looking for. I know nothing about it, so I wouldn't choose that. But if you did know something, it might be a good thing to go after, because we're seeing the eggs on all of them being pretty popular. But interestingly enough, the base nearite snail keyword has 18,000 monthly searches, and the SEO difficulty is on the lower side. So, but go back to the keyword ideas. We see lifespan. Let's lower the difficulty. Sorry about that. Care with beta. This is something that I could write about because that is what I have currently in my tank. I could write about the experience I had with that. Snail care, I could potentially touch on that since I have had them for a few months. Nearite snail types. So what I like to do is also select keywords that are informational. So nearite snails types. We'd have 590, SEO difficulty of 33, and let's look at the competitive landscape. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sites in the top 10 results. With a domain authority of less than 35. So not bad. We only have 590 search volume, but could be somewhere to go. So let's look at the related keywords. Nearite snail's horn, black racer. Again, we see that nearites and types of nearite snails. So the combination of those is over 1,000. So this might be a good one to go after. And what we can have is what we're starting to develop here is a silo or a category. So this page could be the host for all these other different types of snails. So we can have type of freshwater snails, and we can leave it to the general category. So there are near-rate snails, there are mystery snails, and the list goes on. But then, linking from that page, we can have specific types of snails. So now we're already seeing that this list can be narrowed down even more. So if we focus on this type of snails, let me look up type of snail. And now we're kind of finding a niche that might have lower competition and might be easier to rank in. So type of snails in aquariums, type of snails. Okay. Related, not great. So let's look up snail types, because the way Ubersuggest works is it doesn't quite think about some of the other ways in which these queries can be reviewed. So types of snails aquarium, snail types for aquarium, near-rate snail types, there we are again, land snail types, different types of snails, rabbit snail types, I also have one of those. So if you found yourself wanting to create a very thorough resource, you could do types of freshwater snails and then go into rabbit snails, waters, near-rate snails. I would also do mystery snails, etc. So what we have done at this point is determined that we want to look into this types of snails query. Yes, we do have all these other keywords, and what I like to do is create a master list. So that is what we are starting to develop. Eventually, over time, we will continue to get keywords from Ubersuggest, export them, and then import them into here so that we can have our own database of keywords which we're interested in. So if I wanted to look at type of freshwater snails, the next thing I would do is just look at the regular Google results. So freshwater snails. So as you'll notice, I have a few plugins. I have the Ubersuggest extension, which will be limited if you don't have the paid version, but it'll show you, the information that we saw over here in the actual results, and will give you some SEO metrics. I also have SEO Minion, and this is something I relatively recently downloaded, and this allows you to expand and export this people also ask section. It does a few other things, but that's the only thing I've used it for. I also have this plugin, which you'll see what it does. It's from Keyword Surfer, and what it does is create a or Surfer SEO. What it does is create an article outline, a free article outline for you. So this is something that I find really helpful, because basically what it does is it compares the information that's in these results and creates an outline. So this can also be used for keyword research. So this is actually wonderful, because what we're seeing is types of snails. Well, it mentions mystery snail, assassin snail, ramshorn snail, near-rate snail, black devil snail, Japanese trapdoor snails, things I have no idea about. So actually, what I'm going to do is take these keywords and bring them back into Ubersuggest and see what happens. So we already looked at near-rate snails. I also have had mystery snails in the past. They are no longer with me. But what we're going to do is, use this as a basis to see where else we can expand this keyword research. So I'm already pretty set on wanting to write an article on types of snails. So if I look at the mystery snails, the results for the low difficulty keywords, mystery snail eggs. Again, here we see that eggs. So if this is something you wanted to go after, I would be very interested to see where this goes. I know nothing about it, so I don't really want to look into it. And yeah, it's just something I don't want to do. But we're seeing breeding, mating, hatching, mystery snail and beta. Okay, here we go. We're seeing more compatibility. So maybe there's an article that we can use that combines, mystery snail and beta, nearite snail and beta. So we can have a reference of snails compatible with betas. That might be something we look into, because we could target this individually, and if you have the time and you'd rather produce more content to go after lower terms, then absolutely do that. I think if you can, going after those very specific smaller volumes is a better idea than making one massive resource if it's too competitive. So, let's look at the related terms for the mystery snail. Mystery snail purple, poop. That's interesting. There are different colors of mystery snails. So if you were to write something on the types of mystery snails, you'd want to include purple. You'd want to include jade. You'd want to include mystery snail colors. So now we're starting to see more options of how we can kind of narrow this down, even more. So let's look up. Actually, let's add some of these keywords. Let's do mystery snail colors. Mystery snail. Oh, and that's spelled the British way, so that's something to keep in mind too. I always wrote colors like that, even though I'm clearly not from Britain, and I don't know where I got it from, just like behavior. For some reason, I always do IOUR. Anyway, so let's also get this top 10 query results and see what that gives us. I'm also going to add mystery snail and beta as well, because I think that's important. All right, domain authority. We got 1 under 35, 2, 3, 4. We have 4. Not bad. Could be worse. All right, so let's look at the mystery snail and beta, or beta. Some people say beta. I think beta just sounds nicer. So again, this is kind of low volume, but what I'm trying to do is not just find individual keywords that I can rank for, but I'm trying to find a cluster that I see are underserved. And that way it allows me to create a backlinking profile within each other, as well as some authority in this space. So under 35, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have 6. It is interesting. We have a domain authority of 91, but if you notice, Stack Exchange is a search query. So this is actually really good to see. All right, so let's look up the other type of fish that it listed. Let's look up ramshorn fish, or snails, sorry. Ramshorn snails. Again, I'd have to double check that all these are freshwater, because I'm trying to go for freshwater. That's the category I want to go for. Again, here's this eggs. I think if someone, this would definitely be something I would look for, maybe in my next step. It just seems like too good of an opportunity to ignore. So, eggs, breeding, whole site and breeding could do well. Look, ramshorn snails color. All right, so now we're getting into expansion on developing this types. Though it's not specific types, it is kind of breaking down in more detail the specifics of this this family of types of snails. So we have 1, 2, 3. There's only 3 here. And yeah, there's only 3 here. So I'm just going to keep going down this list. All right. So what I just did was I went through, again, this is basic. I would definitely spend more time to get to know the landscape, but this gives me a good idea of a parent category and the subcategories that would fit under it. So the category types of snails. So what I like to do is create a hub, we'll call it. So this is the page that will allow us to connect all of these keywords to this top page. So I like to designate when something's a hub. All of these are going to be types of snails. Great. So what I went through before is I looked at how many results in the top 10 had a domain authority of less than 35. So what I'm going to do is create my own numerical rating that's going to allow me to prioritize how I'm going to rate these. Basically help me decide what's worth my time doing sooner rather than later. I do always believe in producing content that is complete. These are the important keywords I want to target, but I also want to make sure I really cover this type of freshwater snails very thoroughly. So there are definitely going to be some other keywords that I should think about for sake of completion, but these are the keywords that I really want to target for SEO results. You have to recognize that when you create a blog, not every article you write needs to be a competitive keyword, needs to be something you go after. You can have other articles that simply complement the target keywords you are going after, and then eventually you can just create more competitive content that isn't meant to compete on Google, but can be viewed from references in your current blog types. So this numerical rating that I create is simply a value that takes a search volume, divides it by 100 just to make the number a little bit smaller. I multiply it by 36 minus the SEO difficulty, and what this section of the equation does is create a value so that the smaller this number is, the larger this value becomes. And similarly, I take this value and multiply it by 10. Again, this section of the equation now allows us to make this numerical rating go up as this number goes up. And as this number goes up, that means the competition goes down. So now we get a relatively arbitrary number. So what I do then is I sort this largest to smallest. And what we see is type of freshwater snail stays first, which is great because that is the hub. Then I would look at gold rabbit snails, yellow rabbit snails, and I would write these in order down the line. So I'm going to continue doing some more examples of my keyword research, but I always do keyword research in batches that give me an idea of that parent category or that hub that I want to target. And then I look at more detailed and related keywords to that hub. And this allows me that when I create my gold rabbit snails, I can now link that into this freshwater snails. I can link this article, the next, and I can link all of these articles back to that top one. So then Google also understands what these articles about, that they're all kind of related to one another. In my research, I also found there was some interest in having these snails compatibility with beta. Then there was also just the name of the snail with care. So you could have a general care page about freshwater snails and then go through the care of each of them. So one thing that I would mention about this niche is that compared to my niche, these are a bit lower in search volume keywords. I tend to find things that are more in, the above 1,000 range, but this was just an example of how I do my research. And this is the thought process I go through. And this might be an article that I choose to write fairly quickly. But what I'd like to do, again, is really select something that kind of encompasses multiple queries that are all related to one another, that the first query has relatively high search volume, and then you kind of specialize as you go down. So and then what I'll do is just, again, create a master list of all the keywords and rank them based on their difficulty. If I want this numerical rating, I just have a whole, database essentially for myself. So another, hub that I might look into is, let's see. Live plant for fish tank. That's probably great. There are a ton of live plants that you can have in a fish tank. So you could make this be your hub, and then you look at all the different types of live plants and see if there's any other, category you can attack that's within that parent category. Similarly, there's a query here of angelfish tank mates. All right, so now that's your hub. You can write all the different tank mates, and then you could have individual articles about how each of them interacts with beta fish and how you would take care of that type of tank. Again, these are just ideas of what I might look for in a hub, but I always want to start with a hub and then find more specific keywords that kind of fit under that hub. And what's great about this strategy is that this hub will create a good outline for you to then create the rest of these. So once I write one article about gold rabbit snails, I'll have a very good outline on how to do that for yellow rabbit snails, nearite snails, apple snails. You get the picture. And I think it's a great technique to use when doing keyword research. So that's all I have for my basic keyword research approach. I hope you found this helpful and informative, and I'd love to hear if you were to give it a shot and if you had any success. This is the general approach that I use when conducting my own keyword research. And it varies from time to time, and there are multiple resources I use, but overall the general thought process is in fact the same. So please let me know if you found this helpful in the comments. Let me know if you have any questions. I am happy to help. I know keyword research can be really challenging, but I think it's one of the most important pieces of creating a blog. And I've been fortunate enough that this strategy has worked for me, that I hope it also works for you too. Of course, there's no guarantee that this is going to work for you, but I hope it does. And I will definitely have some more videos that go in detail about the tools I use and some more examples, as well as a more detailed approach that you could potentially use on your blog. So as always, please like and subscribe if you found this helpful and want to follow me along this journey, and I hope to see you soon.